Fuck this goddamn piece of shit company. I have had my intelligence insulted long enough. Just when you think they're about to make a viable decision, they pull the rug out from under you. I am fed up. I have had my hopes dashed at every turn. I don't even know who the fuck I am anymore. The WWE is booked so badly, it has caused me to question the very foundations of my existence. Just die in my goddamn sleep already.
Welcome to the show, guys. Episode, 2 of season 2, I believe.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're going to do 2 this week, but we are extremely fed up with the way WWE's been booked as of the last few weeks after WrestleMania. I said it earlier, but the first couple shows after WrestleMania were okay. And then it's just been all downhill. Like, ultimately, it's just been absolutely ridiculous. Tonight's Raw was another, like, abysmal piece of booking on Vince McMahon's part.
I wouldn't even say downhill. I'd say that's a 90-degree vertical drop.
Yeah. Like,
but it's not on Vince. It's not on Vince.
It's on somebody.
It's on Triple H.
It doesn't matter at this point.
It's been shown in the last couple of weeks that Vince has started to rein back on the whole thing. And this is Triple H's show.
Well, I hope that this is not a sign of where Triple H is going to take it.
All hope is gone.
Alright, so we're going to try and make sense of it in as much as we can. I don't even have notes for this, but I know Tim's got the Twitter up and things like that, so we'll kind of just run through what we thought was important, which isn't really very much.
We'll still be putting more thought into it than WWE puts into their booking.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So let's introduce ourselves.
Yeah. Of course, as always, I'm Seth Skinner.
I think I'm Bill Harrison.
And if Bill's stroke hasn't affected us all, I am Tim LeMay, and welcome to Same Circle Podcast.
We hopefully will have an extra person. Gary should be here on Thursday. We're trying to do 2 this week, like I said. And tonight I think we're going to mostly go over Lucha Underground, NXT, and we'll touch on TNA IMPACT from this week as well. But let's go back to this abysmal Raw.
It opened with Randy Orton standing in a steel cage in Albany.
Yeah, which is in our backyard, basically.
Pretty good representation of Albany, to be honest.
To be fair, last time I told Seth about this, Albany was in November, which was the SmackDown. They also had like 2 or 3 cage matches. So I think they just keep that cage in Albany for whenever they roll around.
Yeah.
There's a storage shed rented out all year.
Yeah. We know the Albany Devils don't need it, so. Alright, so we got Randy Orton. Randy Orton's standing in the cage, and he's talking about Sunday and his plans for Seth Rollins. I mean, that was pretty bland to open up. I mean, you know Seth Rollins is going to come out and, answer the call, and at some point the cage is going to factor into the rest of the night.
You hope.
But you would hope. But, I mean, having the authority back and having an opening promo that's less than 20 minutes was kind of a godsend.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like last week where for me it all just kind of blended together because the weather here was bad, so we were like more like entertained with the thunderstorm. The thunderstorm that was going on versus actually watching Raw.
But what happened is right after that promo, Seth, I talked about this with you, I think yesterday, that Dean Ambrose was not televised for Raw or SmackDown, yet he was still televised for Extreme Rules, so we were trying to figure out what the hell's going on there.
Yeah.
And of course he comes out, he battles Luke Harper in a match that I'm still shrugging my shoulders because as it finished, you see Luke disappears off stage, Dean Ambrose looks like he's going to go after him, shrugs, turns back on, they hit his theme music, and that's it.
Oh, yeah, I found that it was odd, to say the least.
I can't even question anymore what they're doing with any of these characters. Like, especially Dean Ambrose. For the longest time, he's been like in a spot where like they can do a lot with him, but he doesn't. He never gets to see. Like, he never seems to be put in the right place.
He's the top 4 in merch sales on their website of active wrestlers, but he has not had a singles pay-per-view win since the Shield broke up. You have Roman Reigns, the positioned guy who's like the next in line. You have Seth Rollins, who's currently holding the WWE title. And you have Dean Ambrose, who's just fighting his way up the mid-card and having absolutely no traction when it comes to booking.
Yeah.
And perhaps even worse than that, they seem to have neutered any nuance that his character had. He went from this angry guy who's willing to basically fight anyone who gets in his way to achieve what he wants. Now he's just like the token crazy guy who appeals to children and does wacky things, assaults people with condiments.
Yeah, and it's like, before WrestleMania, we saw promos like where he'd be goofy and he was like playing pranks on Seth Rollins and things like that, and we don't see that anymore.
We saw after Fastlane, he had that promo that said, maybe I don't know how to win anymore. Maybe I need to go over the top. Maybe I need to prove that I belong here and kick some ass along the way. And we saw that with him stealing the titles and moving towards the Intercontinental match. But we had Luke Harper knocking him out on the ladder. And then we talked about it last week where there was such a layoff over them actually doing anything with it, that largely that ladder spot is completely blurred from our minds. We don't remember it, so we see Dean Ambrose and Luke Harper fighting, and sure, we can recall to that moment, but we don't see any real reason for those two to go against each other other than the fact that they don't have a reason to put these two on the show.
I don't know. There's not much more I can say besides, like, I can't, like, facepalm enough because of the things that, like, they could be doing.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, like, as a fan, it's frustrating just to even watch Raw.
Yeah. And another reason this feud is struggling is because Luke Harper doesn't have enough of a character either for him to carry the feud on his own. They gave him like 30 seconds of mic time today, and it was just a generic, oh, you better be afraid of me platitude, and that really doesn't accomplish anything for anyone.
But his language was actually strongly coherent for the character that we see. We're expecting like an angry truck driver, and he came out and delivered his lines crisp and clean, way better than, say, Roman Reigns.
That's what I was thinking.
And so, I mean, that at least got me a little more excited.
Yeah, you didn't have a lot of lines to have to work with, but
his pacing was there. So I guess moving on from that, our next bit was Seth Rollins saying that he needed more security from Randy Orton and Kane. No big deal.
I think a lot of it is shadowing towards the... Because we're thinking... I think all of us are thinking that Kane and Big Show are at the end of their rope, and it's a point where they're both going to probably be done relatively soon. So at a certain point, the authority has to kind of drop off. And a lot of people are saying, Kane's going to have a sort of mask storyline. But the whole thing is that you can't predict any of this because of how, like, going into every episode, you have no idea what the hell is going to happen because of the booking. And I want to see Kane take his mask back, go against the authority, be the kind of rebel, and go out with a bang. Because Kane deserves that.
I really foresee that happening, and I'm super excited if it does.
Yeah. And Big Show is kind of in the Roman Reigns thing, so I don't know how he can go out with a bang from that kind of situation. I mean, the only thing I can see from that is Roman Reigns beating him.
Yeah, it does seem like they've built up towards that Kane face turn, or at least turning against the authority, and then even just tonight, it seemed like they were sort of moving away from it. But then they went back towards it a little bit at the end. But I do think they've at least done a good job of actually making us want to see something, if anything, that involves Kane, which I think even just a couple months ago would not have been the case. So that's something they've at least done kind of well, and I gotta at least give them that.
Yeah, and you heard the fans there, like, they were behind Kane for the first time in a while.
I think what we're seeing are the fans realizing that Kane might be the most down-to-earth, realist person in the Authority, and that's really kind of starting to resound with the WWE fans.
It almost makes me want to not see Kane take on the mask and just turn just as corporate Kane, just being that real guy, like almost sort of like a face as he's the same way he played it as part of Team Hell No, but without that tag team dynamic going on. But I do think there is potential for the character to develop there, but hoping for character development in WWE is a hard thing to hold out hope for nowadays.
I mean, we legitimately thought that the Thunderstorm had more character development than Raw did.
Yeah. And I guess moving on from there, we have to talk about the New Day versus the Lucha Dragons. Number one contender for the WWE tag team titles at Extreme Rules. That was the stipulation to tonight's match.
I like the Lucha Dragons more and more every time I see them, and I started watching them in NXT, obviously. And it's mostly Kalisto that seems to carry the matches. So I think Sin Cara is kind of bumping him up there so that Kalisto can be that singles guy eventually, which would be nice to see because it's nice to have somebody that fills in that kind of Rey Mysterio section or spot on the roster.
Exactly, and tonight's match had like a two-pronged effect. I mean, first off, we saw the Lucha Dragons. They didn't look weak. And, I mean, they're on the build-up. They've only been on the roster since WrestleMania. But looking at them moving forwards, we're like, this is a team of the future. This is a team we can see 3-4 months down the road. They don't need to win the titles or even have a title shot already because we need them to build that a little longer. On the other hand, we saw the New Day win via Xavier Woods with a little bit of interference that went unsaw by the ref. But we're seeing the New Day, who have constantly taken their "we're the good guys" gimmick and have that thrown back against them by the fans, pretty much forcing a heel turn. This is going to be the do-or-die moment for the New Day at Extreme Rules. It's how will they come out and play against what they came in as for a chance at winning what they came here to get.
Yeah, and tonight's match was a little concerning in that way because this match was really the first time that they've done something outright heelish, and the crowd didn't really seem to buy into it. I don't know if it was because it was just something a little bit more subtle than WWE usually books its interference as, but the crowd just really did not respond as strongly as one would hope to the Xavier Woods interference.
Yeah, and that just depends on how much the crowd really hates Cesaro and Kid coming out because they're not a face tag team. So now all of a sudden you have Sunday is going to be an extreme, not to be a pun, but an extreme shot at what their future holds in the WWE as a group.
Yeah, that's a good point too, is that Cesaro and Kid don't exactly have a ton of heat as heels, and Lucha Dragons, they're still new. I mean, they're pretty over as faces, but they don't have that amount of sympathy from the crowd that has built up yet, so there's really not a lot for the New Day to work with, I guess. I really don't think they're being put in that good of a position, and it doesn't help that the tag title match is going to be on the Extreme Rules pre-show. That's become something of a tradition up to this point, and I'm not a big fan of it. I really think it does the tag division no favors.
No. But I guess from that over is Curtis Axel. Curtis Axel's been taking the job as kind of like the jobber, not that important to the show. Like, he's not there for wins or losses. He's there to kind of showcase other stars like he did with Dean Ambrose and Neville in the past few weeks. And now you see Fandango. He's broken up from Eva Mendes, and you see his heel streak coming alive. Do you buy or sell Fandango as an actual wrestler, an actual star here to shake things up in the WWE?
I have thought for a long time that Fandango was very good in the ring, so I think it's about time that they give him time to show that and kind of move past the gimmick. The gimmick seems to be starting to work somehow. but I think his ring work is impressive, so I think he does deserve a little bit of that push to at least get a chance.
Yeah, I do think it's nice to see. This is, if you think about it, this is his first real face run under the Fandango gimmick. I think the ring work that he has contributes well to that. The gimmick does seem to be getting some traction, so I'm buying into that for right now, but it remains to be seen how WWE can capitalize on that momentum, which realistically, it's going to be a recurring theme. That's what it all comes back to in the end, is how are they going to avoid screwing this up?
Mm-hmm.
So after that, we had Kane pretty much giving Triple H his 2 weeks notice, and then given the gimmick that he will be the gatekeeper for the Seth Rollins-Randy Orton fight, kind of giving Kane another, I guess, air of power over the two superstars and air of power over Seth Rollins, who has gotten a head way bigger than his shoes can fill lately. So that was a pretty good way to try to keep Kane under wraps for now.
Yeah. And they kind of played with everybody in a couple ways tonight with Kane, but we'll probably talk about it a little later, just because it did happen later in the show.
Honestly, I really do like this direction they're pushing Seth Rollins' character in, with sort of pushing him as a kind of a bratty teenager personality, and I think that actually works pretty well. He plays it well. It's very unlikable as a heel gimmick, so I do think that has legs.
Definitely. And hopefully we will touch on that in a bit in the podcast, but right now we also have to talk about the next match on the Raw bill, which was Naomi versus Brie Bella. Of course, Paige has been kind of written off due to an injury angle, even though she holds the rights to face Nikki Bella at Extreme Rules for the title. But we see Naomi, who has taken her heel stance and kind of put her foot to the mat to prove that she belongs there. What do you guys think about, Naomi, her heelish tens, and defeating Brie Bella tonight?
I thought, number one, it was odd that they put the two heels together in that match. I think that the Naomi, I think Naomi should be a babyface simply because I feel she's better at it. But I think she does have she does decent work in the ring, so, there's not really a lot of replacements for Paige, so the next best person I would have to go with is Naomi.
I do think it is Naomi's time to get that title shot. I mean, the ring work, it isn't all there. She has the sheer athleticism, but she's definitely lacking in polish. And the character work, I don't think is that strong either. I mean, especially as a heel, that really tends to expose it a little bit more. At least with the face, she has the Usos to work off of. She has a little bit more natural charisma in that alignment. But there's, like Seth said, there's not really a better option at the moment with Paige going away to film a movie or whatever she's doing for the next few weeks.
Right.
Naomi does seem to be the next in line. She has done well enough in the months leading up to this to warrant the title shot, so I can't be upset too much about it, But
the one issue moving forward is, from what I've been reading, a lot of what Naomi has had to do in her character has come about the AJ Lee retirement stuff. Like, a lot of that was stuff scripted for AJ Lee. Like, it wouldn't be hard to remember AJ Lee turning on Paige for whatever reason to get her title shot. So now they have to find a way to get Naomi into that title picture to fill in for the AJ Lee role. And I mean, I guess it had to do a forced heel turn, which doesn't fit Naomi, as you guys have said, based on her prior characters, and it's not very developed. But I guess, I mean, it's what they had to do, and she's the next best person up.
That's true. And realistically, I would rather see Naomi get a shot than see another AJ Lee Paige feud where one's turning on the other, and just a whole frenemies angle, which seems to be the only direction they can take those two. So
yeah,
it's really not too bad of an option.
Well, if WWE wants to build their Divas division and they want to show that the Divas are something more than a sideshow, they need to have more than the same 3 or 4 people vying for that title shot every single time. And adding Naomi into the picture makes it look a lot stronger of a division. So when they call up people like Charlotte, Sasha Banks, and those people from NXT, we're going to see a lot stronger division than what we're used to in the past couple of years.
They do need somebody to compete with, so it is a good idea to build some of those divas up, because they have been really rolling with those top 4 for a long time. And even with AJ Lee's departure, you got to put somebody in there to fill that.
Exactly. I guess our next match to talk about, unless you guys have anything else. Yeah, unless you guys have anything else to add, is Sheamus against the Long Island Broski and Zack Ryder, which they phrased it as a hometown match, but I mean, Long Island and Albany, those are quite different places.
Yeah,
I mean, the match opens strong. Sheamus delivers a bro kick to the face, and Zack Ryder's pretty much on the ropes for the entire time until who saves him but Dolph Ziggler.
Listen, we can't even talk about commentating mistakes, because there were countless commentating mistakes on the show. It was hilarious. I mean, we were making fun of it the whole time.
But, yeah, I mean, it was a simple match. It showed Sheamus's heel techniques. Zack Ryder, sorry he had to take the jobber status, but it helps get him on TV for a little bit, so I guess that helps him out a bunch. But Sheamus angry, Dolph's CFA, you're like, why? Kind of served his purpose to move the night along.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I thought that was really the only reason it was there, is another one of those filler matches.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's nice to see Zack Ryder on TV and all, but knowing the backstory behind his meteoric fall from his U.S. title run to the eventual obscurity and jobber status he has now, it was almost embarrassing to see him just run roughshod so far over. Seeing Sheamus on the mic as he's beating the hell out of Ryder, and just the things Sheamus was saying, it's like, the man has been buried to bedrock, and they just tried to bury him even deeper tonight. And it was honestly almost uncomfortable to watch.
I mean, there was like 3 or 4 of those matches where you're just getting a guy who's already at the bottom of the card getting his ass kicked and like just getting the floor wiped with him.
Essentially a squash match for somebody who's already an established superstar main event character. It was unneeded.
And then with Dolph Ziggler running in after 2 bro kicks have been delivered and countless other punishment, and how they've, especially, I haven't watched in a while, but the JBL and Cole show, a few months ago, they were trying to push the whole Ziggler and Ryder being bros, that whole angle, and seeing Ziggler just let Ryder take that amount of punishment before running in to make the save, that's almost a Cena level of being an asshole face.
Yeah, and I think it didn't do anything to save Dolph Ziggler. It didn't do anything to prove Sheamus is any more of a heel, and it definitely did not do anything to help Zack Ryder return from injury to the main roster.
If anything, it felt like they were basically giving Zack Ryder one more paycheck before letting him go for spring cleaning, really.
Get ready to watch him on Lucha Underground this fall. No, who knows? Following that, I mean, we had John Cena and his U.S. title open challenge, but Bill, who answers John Cena's call?
That would be the Devil's favorite depends where Kane.
That was another awkward part of the show, but yes.
I don't know. I think, again, it's like they're trying to give Kane some exposure, some time before they do something with his character.
I really hoped he was going to come down the ramp dressed as the Big Red Machine.
Yeah. I think they need to play it up a little more, like have him like fighting with himself over whether he wants to wear the mask or not, and kind of take that role over again.
Yeah. This was generally a slow, plotting match. It is not the caliber of match I'd hope for from the Cena U.S. title challenge. There was really nobody had much to gain from it, and I don't know, it had, once again, as we talked about last week, that symptom of the heel tries to hit their finisher, Cena escapes, Cena hits the FU for the win, and that's about how all of Cena's title defenses have gone, and
yeah.
It's just tiring at this point.
And who really thought that Kane was going to take the U.S. title and have a match with Rusev at Extreme Rules?
Yeah.
it would be fun to watch, but clearly we're not that well received by the creative staff.
And in a way, it felt like that's the point, is everybody knew that Cena was going to win, so you might as well throw somebody at him who nobody expects to beat Cena.
Yeah.
Especially if Cena's going to lose the title to Rusev, which is now rumored to be an actual thing. But, I mean, Kane really wasn't going to serve anybody any good from winning or losing that title.
Yeah, they're running out of Intercontinental title picture guys, too, to throw into that, too, so.
They started with Ambrose, and it just went downhill from there. So from that, we finally got what I considered, what I hoped was going to be the main event match of the night. We were going to have Damien Mizdow take on The Miz for the right to keep the Miz brand. And I kind of hoped this was going to be like a legitimate 10, 15-minute match, something to give those two guys grounds moving forwards. There were rumors that The Miz is going to be written off TV in the next couple of weeks, so we expected some kind of big turnout, but that was not the match that we got.
Yeah. I was really surprised that they had Miz win this. I mean, how is that how they're going to write him off of the show? I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. You would think even if the Miz wins that, Mizdow goes berserk, kind of, injures him, puts him out for a couple weeks.
If anything, even if they had Randy Orton come out and RKO the Miz afterwards, if anything, have Randy Orton give Miz the punt and put him out for a significant amount of time. That's a consistent, reliable option, and they couldn't even give us that. The one thing that redeemed this match, I think, was the Summer Rae tearing a heel off of her brief face flirtation with Mizdow.
Mm-hmm.
And even that was not that much of a highlight. It was, I wouldn't say it was quite predictable, but I wasn't completely surprised by it. But it at least was something a little bit different that we weren't expecting.
Yeah, and I guess one of the good things is I saw that supposedly The Miz was supposed to get written off tonight, but they are going to save that. I believe he's supposed to appear on SmackDown and up until Extreme Rules, and then he's out.
That's kind of odd.
It's odd, but hopefully we'll see Damien Sandow get his moment, because he's been shining.
It does raise the question of, if they're going to wait until Extreme Rules to write Miz off, why bother writing Paige off as early as they did? At least feed her to the Bellas or Naomi or something at Extreme Rules. Give someone that little bit more credibility, but they couldn't even accomplish that.
I don't think either of them are scheduled to work at Extreme Rules, though.
Not yet, no. And with the way that the card is filled out already, I don't see a spot for either of them or either of those matches to occur.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, I think they're having a pre-show too, so they threw one of those matches on there, I believe. I think somebody said something like that on Raw at least.
I will say Damien Sandow did just legitimately tweet a minute ago. Everyone agrees that I do The Miz better than Miz. I wonder how good I will do me. So hopefully that's a seed to sow for tomorrow on the SmackDown taping.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine something happens on SmackDown, and if not, it does go down on Extreme Rules.
All right, but we do have to move forward. We have Ryback in the random match of the week against Adam Rose.
Basically, all that happened was Ryback squashed him and then attacked some friggin' fruit and shit and a hot dog.
A banana and a hot dog, which seems to be an odd choice in imagery, and then they have him hop on the mic for a short 30-second spiel, telling what was apparently supposed to be a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's about all there is to say about that match.
Basically.
Really, what I did like was the one right before Ryback put the banana and the hot dog up for the shell shock. He yells out, "It's funny because they're food." That was pretty much the highlight of the last hour of the show, realistically.
Feed me more. The main event, Randy Orton against Ziggler, no big deal. That match was, Seth Rollins against Ziggler. Rollins defeats Ziggler, and then Randy Orton sneaks into the cage as it's lowered, RKOs Seth Rollins, and that's the end of the show.
And they had Kane show up, obviously, just to give him more airtime.
And Sheamus also made an appearance for
Yep.
unclear. Well, I mean, you knew why he was there, but didn't exactly accomplish much.
I don't know. Again, I think it was kind of a stale Raw.
Yeah. As far as the Rollins and Ziggler match itself goes, I mean, those are two good workers. We've seen in the past that they work together, and they didn't have much to work with, but the match really wasn't that special despite all that either.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a letdown.
What I do want to say about this Raw was something I wrote about yesterday or 2 days ago that I posted on our Facebook page, which you can check out at Same Circle Wrestling on the Facebook machine thing, was about their pushing of Adrian Neville as the Neville character a little bit too much in the first couple of weeks. They had him out in like every single against a barrage of upper mid-card characters, losing, winning for whatever reason, but they didn't have a reason to have him there other than the fact that, hey, look, it's Neville. But anybody who's watched NXT, anybody who's been reading any kind of dirt sheet in the past year has realized that Neville's going to come to the main card at WWE and have some kind of success. So it was glad to see that Neville kind of got the night off tonight, that he didn't appear at all.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a question of how fast they're going to push him. And I think that he has the talent to be pushed, and I want him to see pushed. I want him to see a push ultimately, but it's a matter of, do you push him now and then not have any idea of what to do with him later, or wait a little bit, have him build a little bit more of a fan base and then push him. But the thing is, he's gotten so much exposure from NXT, and with NXT growing, it's not like it used to be where NXT guys build a big following in NXT and then come to the main roster and then don't get any reaction like an Emma or
Leo Kruger.
Yeah, and it's like you come to the main roster now and people have the network and people know who you are, so you already have a following and you can get a push relatively fast if they feel it's right.
Yeah. And I do agree, it was nice to see them basically pull the reins in on Neville's push a little bit, just because of what we've seen with the Roman Reigns push being so forced, but I do think it came at an awkward moment where you don't have Cesaro and Kid on the program, you don't have Daniel Bryan on the program, and he's got his own reasons for being absent, but you don't have Neville on the program. You're really not utilizing a lot of your best in-ring talent, and it was an awkward moment to not have Neville on the program for. I wouldn't have minded seeing him answering Cena's challenge, if only because Neville has actually been losing enough that the push doesn't come off as being so forced, but I can't be opposed to it really, but it still would have been nice to see a little bit more high caliber ring work on tonight's episode.
Yeah.
And I think you can see that in my write-up on the Facebook page. Like, there's nothing wrong with getting Neville out there and getting him some action against some top stars, but just trying to force him into issues on every show so that way he's on every show just gets you into an issue where all of a sudden we don't have a story for him. Now all of a sudden his character becomes bland because they don't have a reason for him to show up every night. So, I mean, that's just the risk that they run, and thankfully tonight being a go-home episode for Extreme Rules, they were able to kind of rein that in, as you guys said, to hopefully save his character for after Extreme Rules we can get some kind of traction out of it.
Right. Yeah. The bottom line is you can't Goldberg a guy anymore. It just doesn't work with the way that social media is and the fans. It's not kayfabe anymore. Back when Goldberg was around, he could tear through everybody and nobody was complaining about his push, Yeah.
So I guess that pretty much wraps up our night for Raw. We're just very underwhelmed with the show.
Yeah, thank God that's over. And I feel like there's probably more disappointment to come, but hopefully Extreme Rules is a decent pay-per-view. I feel like most of the time it's just they have bad shows like weekly shows, and then their pay-per-views are okay.
Especially in the last few months, like the pay-per-views have been outperforming their regular shows, which is obviously what you want to do if you want people to buy the network and pay to watch those great shows. But they're kind of ruining the casual fans' idea of turning on Raw on a Monday night and watching a boring, bland performance.
Yeah. All right, so what do we want to do next? Lucha, NXT?
No, quickly we have to hit on, during the show, something was brought out on the WWE app moving forward to Extreme Rules that wasn't announced at all during the performance, that Dean Ambrose and Luke Harper will be facing each other at Extreme Rules in what is called a Chicago Street Fight, which I guess you guys can also akin back to the Dean Ambrose-Cesaro Street Fight for Halloween and the Dean Ambrose Bray Wyatt Miracle on 34th Street Fight around Christmas time. It should be a fun match, but then again, are we wasting Dean Ambrose on that gimmick? I don't know, but that's just something that popped in between shows.
Yeah, I always think it's strange that they call it a street fight when really it's just basically a no DQ match or like a falls count anywhere match. They're essentially all the same thing.
Yeah. I just wanted to hit on that before we moved on to NXT from last week.
Right. NXT wasn't that bad, I guess. I mean, it hasn't been too great lately, but this show was okay just because the main event really kind of saved it, in my opinion. It started off with Solomon Crowe and CJ Parker.
Which is CJ Parker's farewell match to NXT.
And all I really could think about was that Solomon Crowe needs to go Super Saiyan at some point.
Yeah.
Because of his haircut. But Solomon Crowe wins. They're gonna slowly push him up just because he's got a decent background. From, as far as the fans are concerned, they really like him. So, well, I feel like fans like Sami Callihan. They don't know Solomon Crowe yet.
Yeah. I feel like Solomon Crowe's character really hasn't been developed at all. He's just sort of a dude who's there, and a dial tone plays during his theme. And there's really so much potential with that hacker gimmick. The whole technical aspect of, like, Full Sail University.
He has the hacker and... Oh, no, I just mean he has the gimmick I wish Dean Ambrose had. Because he has the I'm just here to screw stuff up, I don't have an actual direction gimmick. But for some reason when Solomon Crowe comes out and does it, you actually believe it a little bit more.
Yeah, there is sort of like that counterculture edge to Solomon Crowe, really. I don't know how else to describe it, but it does feel like he's almost there just to like cause chaos, and he really does somehow manage to communicate that better than Dean Ambrose. I can't put my finger on how, but it's there.
Yeah. I think his whole look is very different as well, so it's something that people can like really... You notice it right off the bat, because it's a very strange, like, number one, it's a strange gimmick, and number two, his whole appearance and his whole getup is totally different from anything we've seen, really.
Yeah. He embodies chaos.
Yeah.
And then after that, we had Baron Corbin going against no-name Steve Cutler. Quick Baron Corbin decision, no big win there.
Yeah.
And then Enzo Amore and big... Oh, do you have something else to add?
I was just going to say, we're beyond the point where Baron Corbin squashing jobbers does anything for him. You can really tell that they're just treading water with him at this point, waiting to get the top of the card emptied out before they can do something with him.
Yep, exactly.
He tells me they need a mid-card title in NXT right now. They need something for someone else to hold that's not Kevin Owens, because I don't see Kevin Owens losing it anytime soon. I don't see him losing to anybody other than Sami Zayn. So building up Baron Corbin and Hideo Itami and Tyler...
I think a minor belt would be a good idea for NXT, but they're not a long enough show for that, I don't think. Yeah. I think if they were to stretch out to 2 hours, it would be a feasible option. But as of right now, it's obviously, I don't think they could do it. And then Colin Cassidy and Enzo Amore
over Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas, which... Another squash, pretty much.
Yeah. basically. They're out there basically to develop their characters. They're doing, like, I think they do pretty good mic work, and I think they're a good, like, comedy act, I guess, in a sense. They're sort of comedy. But I think that it's getting over pretty well with the NXT crowd.
Yeah, it's nice and refreshing for the top, and it's nothing that's really going to get them over with anybody else. I mean, look at the vaudevillain who disappeared off the face of the earth.
And then we had Blue Pants come out.
My favorite. I love her.
She was basically just there for Dana Brooke's debut, and she came out and ended up winning the match. It didn't look very impressive, in my opinion. I think her character was a little over the top sometimes, but I guess we'll see where she goes with that.
And as far as Dana Brooke's character was over the top, I almost want to see her go all the way with it and just be a complete female knockoff of Scott Steiner. Just like the big bad booty mama. That would print money, if you ask me.
I would give all that money to print. I would be on top of that.
And then Zayn and Rhino, which was Zayn's return.
Another nice little squash. Yeah, it was his big return after being decimated by Kevin Owens, and I don't think it does anything to other than we already know Sami Zayn's a big deal. Putting Rhino in there just shows that Rhino's a proven guy.
Yeah, I mean, they're just using Rhino to kind of boost the talent. And I don't think, if I was Rhino, I'd definitely be wanting to be in NXT at this point in time.
Yeah.
So, anything else we want to throw in about NXT or no?
Nothing I can think of.
I just want to note that apparently they had to move the next planned NXT special up a few months so as not to coincide with WrestleMania weekend and whatever, so the booking has kind of been in a holding pattern, apparently, and I think that would account for a lot of the slowdown we've seen in NXT. So, I don't think it's time to pronounce it. It's not dead in the water, but it's definitely not at the high points it once was, but there is still hope that NXT can consistently be that show once it gets its traction back and they're able to book at the speed they want.
Yeah, and they're also taking guys. I think they're dealing with also that the Lucha Dragons left, so there's not as many tag matches that they can make up. So, and I think they're also in limbo at the point where who do we want to take up after WrestleMania to the main roster, and who are we going to bring up to NXT? I think all those things really factor into it.
Yeah.
So I think from there we got to hit probably Bill and my favorite new promotion that we've definitely wrapped our heads around, which is Lucha Underground.
Probably one of the stronger promotions I've seen ever, really, as far as their current run goes.
I was hit or miss, and I got into it a couple months ago, especially around the Alberto Del Rio departure, and when I saw he signed with AAA, I saw something on Reddit about, he was going to appear at Lucha Underground to take the title, and I was so confused as to what that was. I happened to look it up on YouTube, which I'm sure you guys all can, anybody listening. But Lucha Underground, which is a promotion loosely tied to AAA in Mexico, but is filmed in Los Angeles. And I don't know, I bought into it. It's an hour-long program, just like NXT, but for some reason the pace in that and the way they use everybody on the roster almost every week is just an amazing promotion to watch. And this past week was no different.
Yeah, the thing that really caught my eye initially was the way they shoot their promos. It's almost like a movie style. And they also have, similar to NXT, in the intimate feel of a smaller venue and crowds that are there for more of a cult following, is what I'm trying to say. And I thought that really was...
Yeah, and it's owned by a...
I just think that really makes the show, in my opinion.
Exactly, and especially when we move into the first match of the night, which was part of the Lucha Underground Trios tournament, which I think is something the WWE could do well. It exists outside their championship realms, outside like the Intercontinental and U.S. titles and World Championship titles. They also have something called the Trios title, where they put in group at that given time, and they make them go on 3-on-3 matches. And we saw with the opening match, which was Tejano, which was the guy who went on the first episode I ever watched. He battled the title, the AAA title, against Alberto El Patron, otherwise known as Alberto Del Rio. Matched with Cage, who is a literal freaking beast of all muscle, and their star King Lucha Underground title holder, Hernandez, who was a TNA superstar, and Johnny Mundo, who is a character you guys would probably recognize from WWE with his time as John Morrison, going at it in a 3-on-3 match, and that's just to start out the show.
I thought that was really cool too, and I thought that the whole idea of that is really cool because no other promotion does that. So to throw that in there, it sets you apart, number one, and it gives you a lot of possibilities, throwing guys from different feuds into those matches, and even guys that aren't even guys that are feuding, you can throw together on the same team, similar to what they do in WWE with those tag teams that sometimes lead up to pay-per-views.
And I think the trios is actually a carryover from the Lucha Libre style. They're big into that in the main Mexican promotions, and it really is an interesting spin on wrestling that most American fans haven't been exposed to much outside of the occasional 6-man tags and your SmackDown main events, but there's a whole different, almost like a culture about it in the Lucha Libre promotions, and it really is almost its own thing, separate from the main rosters.
Yeah.
And of course, building off that match, we have King Cuerno, Cage, and Tejano. Kind of a letdown because you want to see Johnny Mundo and Hernandez and Prince Puma carry on the Trios title, but we already have Prince Puma as their their Lucha Underground champion. So it's good to have the other three guys still be accessible and still be going after a main title, which is something that WWE really lacks with.
Yeah.
And then you have Dario Cueto, who is their version of a Vince McMahon, come out right after and says he wants a preview of what they're going to have next week going against their main event, where he factors in one guy from each of the other two teams who they will face this coming Wednesday on Lucha Underground. We had Cage from the winners of Cuerno, Cage, and Tejano go against the Mac, who's part of Big Rick's stable, and Son of Havoc, the guy who's teamed with Ivelisse, his now ex-girlfriend, and Angelico, her current boyfriend. So that was a great way to lead that match right into the next part of the show.
And then we also saw Aerostar and Drago, which was for a title implication as well. I thought that was a great match.
It was the culmination of a 5-match series for an unnamed, quote-unquote, unique opportunity offered by Dario Cueto, which has become a pretty nice series of matches and a good storyline, and this was a proper climax to that whole series. It was a very good match, a lot of high spots, but as Lucha Underground is wont to do, they do have some nice psychology and storytelling to link all those spots together, which also is something that WWE tends to lack. So that's nice to see.
That's really what caught my eye, like I said before, is the intimacy, for lack of a better word, of the program itself. So that's all I have for Lucha. I don't know about you guys, but
all I'm saying is I'm looking forward to the Triple Threat Trios Championship this coming Wednesday. I just cannot wait for that.
Yeah. And if you haven't watched Lucha Underground, do it. It's on El Rey Network, which now is on most digital cable providers, I believe. I know Time Warner Cable has it now. It's on at the same time as NXT, so that's kind of odd scheduling conflict. But if you do have WWE Network, you get NXT anyway. You can watch it whenever you want. So check it out if you get a chance. And with that, I'm going to move on to Impact Wrestling, which I really only watched the second half of. And it was, I'm assuming the first half was similar to the second, where it was a bunch of tag teams going at it for a shot in the main event, which was an Ultimate X Tag Team Championship match, which, if you don't know what that means, basically there's 2 ropes suspended above the ring in an X pattern, or fashion, I guess, and the belt is suspended from that. So it's similar to a ladder match, but it's got its own twist. And the first match I saw when I tuned in was Bobby Roode and Austin Aries, who we saw probably not even a year ago in Oswego. He wrestled probably 3 blocks away from my house, and at a Squared Circle Wrestling show.
And dub.
He ended up, actually at that show, he ended up busted open and they had to stop the match. But they took on the Bromans and won to move on to the match, the main event, which had the Hardy Boys. I'm sure a lot of you remember from old school WWF/E.
Going against the they were famous for going against like Edge and Christian and the Dudley Boys and their various disgusting matches that are on the network.
Yeah.
Legendary.
And like a lot of other promotions, you see a lot of guys coming from WWE that, you know, maybe weren't able to find a contract that they like, or maybe just didn't like the direction their creative was going, that do end up in TNA. You got Brodus Clay down there, who I forgot what his name is now. I always call him Brodus
Tyrus.
Clay. Yeah, Tyrus, that's right. And then you got Kurt Angle, you got MVP down there, you got the Hardy Boys, you got all kinds of names down there now. So if you do, remember those names, watch TNA, because it's really not a bad product considering how bad WWE has been in the last couple weeks.
You also have to mention Ethan Carter III, EC3, who was formerly NXT when it was still a game show format. He was the NXT contestant Derek Bateman. I think he's still performing pretty well as an NXT contestant, but he really has taken it to a whole new level in his Ethan Carter III gimmick. He's pretty much the highlight of that entire show for me.
Mm-hmm.
You're one of my top heels working right now.
And outside of all the bad press TNA has gotten in the last week over their Paygate scandal, I think they're still a damn good show to watch on Friday nights.
It's on Destination America, which is also on Time Warner Cable if you have that. I'm sure other digital cable companies will give you that as well. But the Ultimate X match ended with the Hardy Boys winning the tag team titles for the first time in their TNA run. So I thought that was a cool way for us at least, to come into covering TNA a little bit more. And because I've always been a fan of Matt and Jeff Hardy, and I actually saw Matt Hardy a couple years ago in a match with who is now the NXT champion, Kevin Owens, who at the time was Kevin Steen. So I thought that was interesting to see Matt and Jeff win that title.
In this day and age, to watch groups like Squared Circle Wrestling group in those independent contractor wrestlers who we now know can be, in 2 or 3 years' time, your NXT champion, your WWE front runners, your TNA champion. It's so great to finally have, the social media link between all those groups to finally say that, same circle's coming to, or not same circle, but Squared Circle's coming to town. I don't know who I'm going to see. I might see the next big star. And that really kind of helps link all those two together to help regrow the younger fan base into professional wrestling.
Yeah. And they travel all through upstate New York. They've had a lot of big names coming in, too. So, and I forgot to mention Bubba Ray Dudley also is in TNA now. Bully Ray.
Yep.
I saw him down in Orlando. When we were down at Universal Studios, he was there for a TNA taping, and that was pretty cool. We got in there for free, so I think they're going back to Orlando. I think it's next week or in a couple weeks. So, if you are in the Orlando area and you happen to be at Universal Studios, you can walk right in there and watch those tapings for free.
Also, not to mention the fact that right as we went live, WWE made an announcement that NXT will be in Albany middle of May next month.
That's awesome.
So they will be filming in the same arena you just saw SmackDown in tonight. So anybody who listens to us, who's friends of ours, or happen to follow wrestling in the central New York, upstate New York region, boom, there you go. The Stars of Tomorrow will be in your living room today. So there you go.
That's awesome. I feel like we should probably get something together for that.
We should get a crew together and drive on down. Get a hotel room and enjoy the night.
Yeah. So with that, we're at almost an hour mark. Probably with some editing, it won't be quite that long, but
I think we covered everything we had to.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was nice to be able to cover a couple of other promotions, and like we said last time, we are going to try and keep doing that as much as we can, and we're always going to try and live tweet at S Circle Podcast. Follow us. We're always live tweeting if we're watching, and
also, Seth, not to mention, in addition to our just simple reposting of other dirt sheet information, we are trying to write a couple more like long-winded posts from, Seth and mine and Bill's perspective, as well as everyone else in the same circle, just to have some kind of further, such as Neville's maybe surprise too much push or Daniel Bryan's actual injury. We want to try and write more on that stuff from our perspective for you guys. So let us know what you want to hear, what you want us to talk about, what you think we should, give you more of, because that's what we're here for.
Yep.
And with any luck, my perspective will be a little bit less of an angry one next time, hopefully.
We'll sedate Bill after this podcast.
All right, well, we're going to try and shoot another show on Thursday, which will probably be up on Friday if we can go through with it. And that should cover NXT this week, Lucha Underground this week, and also SmackDown if anything relevant happens, which, is a long shot right now.
Yeah.
So with that, we'll say sayonara. We will see you next time. Thank you for listening. Same.
Same.